All right, ready to jump right in on this last Monday of July. That's right. Calendar flips this month, and then we are zeroing in on the start of the college football season. Michigan kicking off during the month of August. It's the last day of August, but it still is within the month technically. So the month of football right around the corner. I think everybody knows that, and you've just been biding your time, however you do it. And for me, I can remember last year after the British Open, I was telling everybody just hang in there, and then I was ready. This year, I thought it was going to be the same thing. And yet the Olympics and the Tigers and the trading deadline have kept me at least a little bit occupied. I know that it's at some point it's not going to matter that whatever's on. It's just going to be me sitting around saying I can't wait for football to start, but I'm trying everything, throwing everything at it to keep myself busy, so I don't just sit around thinking about the opening of the college football season. I don't know if this does me any good talking about Michigan football here today. There's nothing wrong with talking about it. We'll look at the outlook. Whenever I start talking with the folks on the street about Michigan, I say, well, what do you think's going to happen? I'll give you my outlook and, where it's at as we get ready for August. There is some recruiting news to get to. I'm going to start talking about your focus. Now, your focus might just be on the season. My focus remains the same. I have talked about my focus being on the start of the season, and that is the opener against Fresno State, and then week 2 against Texas. I how the players don't really want to look past week 1 or just taking this next practice. Sure, there's Oregon and there's Ohio State at the end of the year, and there's talking about whether and I'm doing it myself today, giving you my outlook on the team and how many wins I think they're going to have. But if I really just am talking about what I'm focused in on, it is the upcoming start of the season, and that is the opener, and that is against Texas. Now, I want to give you, I don't know if this is like a parental discrepant or a parental reminder here but it's a reminder for those of you that just like Michigan football and you don't want to hear anything negative at all about the maize and blue, and you're watching this after the fact, go in and skip to where it says focus or outlook, because there could be some negativity happening today with Michigan with the delivery of the notice of allegations. Now, there was in the paper over the weekend in the Detroit News, because of the Freedom of Information Act, what people like to call Burgergate, that was spelled out. That's not what this is. That was something separate. And, that news was able to come out and you were able to look over it and have some, maybe it shed some light on the way you were viewing that situation. That situation has been handled, and it doesn't look like there's anything more forthcoming with that. Now you have the Connor Stalions piece. That is what is supposedly coming out today. I say supposedly because 5 or 6 weeks ago, everyone that was an insider for Michigan, and it includes Josh Henschke right here at the Maize and Blue Review, they were talking about that the NAs were coming out. Get ready, buckle up, or whatever. I don't know if they're saying that. They're just saying, look, they were acting like they knew what was in there. Like, oh, there's nothing in here at all to be worried about. Just paraphrasing and giving you the general conclusion. Nothing to see here. For all of the opponents that have talked about the hammer is going to be smashed on Michigan and, it's time to pay penance and all that. There was laughter from the Michigan side. I don't know. That's good. I'm hoping that nothing happens to Michigan, to be honest. I'm hoping that it just is a little blip and that we can move on. But so we'll see if it actually does happen today. So here's my real quick, long and short of what I've been able to gather on what's going to happen to Michigan. Whatever happens with Michigan, Michigan fans are going to state that, one, they hate the NCAA and that the penalties are too harsh. No matter what happens with this situation, that's what I predict is going to happen. And on the other side, I predict that the opponents will also say that they hate the NCAA, but they've been too light on Michigan. That is generally how these things work. So is it somewhere in between there? I don't know. But for those that want to laugh or yawn at this and act like it's no big deal, and maybe you will be right. I'm no expert I'm no lawyer. I haven't been involved in with the NCAA and, looking at the bylaws and know exactly chapter and verse what's going on here. But it's my understanding that if somebody on your staff, like Connor Stalions on the Michigan staff, does something and commits a level 1 violation, then your head coach is also guilty of that level 1 violation, and then your university is as well. I've seen a lot of people say, no, it's level 1 violation, but it's only because of Connor Stalions, and it's just him. He's going to have to do the time there. He'll get a show cause, and we'll move on. And maybe that's true. But in 2021, there was a bylaw that said the head coach is presumed to be responsible for actions of the staff. Now, that's the way I read the bylaw. You might be someone that understands, well, that's what the bylaw says, but that's not really what it means. And I'll say, okay. But that's what a 2021 bylaw said, that you are presumed to be responsible for actions of the staff, whether they report to you directly or not. So I would think that Michigan, for whatever Stalions, and they come out with their notice of allegations, and whatever they say, the level 2s that they find with some recruiting things, or the level 1 with what they said Stalions was doing by taping, I think Michigan will be found then responsible for what Stalions had to do, even though that he resigned when he did a couple days before the Purdue game last year. So that's how I see it. Now, there's the part that people say Michigan really wants the university to fight this. And you might want them to fight it because it's such a long, drawn-out process that if you can draw it out even longer, that the idea that the NCAA is going to fizzle because they don't have 2 legs to stand on, and with all of the movement there, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what Michigan did. They could be guilty as anything, but they'll just draw this out in however they can do it with motions and everything, that whatever they can do. You might know whatever the terms that they could do. They just file this, motion that, and they'll just play the long play, and then think that the NCAA is going to dissolve. That might be a great strategy. I don't know if that's a great strategy myself. That seems like it's going to be a while anyways. And then if you can draw it out, I think that I don't know if it's a good strategy. It's a strategy. It's an interesting strategy. It's an interesting strategy to draw it out if you don't really have a leg to stand on. Like, so you say, fight this. And I hear that. Okay, fight it. But what if you don't? What are you fighting? We didn't know. It doesn't matter if you knew. So I don't know. But, look, when you get to a court of law, you do a lot of things to lessen your penalty, even if you are, I'm going to say guilty in this situation, guilty of something, you do everything you can to, lessen the blow on you. So, maybe there are some strategies there to fight and drag this out, and maybe nothing will happen. So that's it. And if you are a Michigan fan who is just wondering, you're not one that, is an expert in all of this. There are plenty of you that are, and are following every single second of this. But if you're not, there are a lot of people that are following it really close that don't think that anything's going to happen, that it's going to be a slap on the wrist for Michigan. And so that is what you hope for from a Michigan standpoint. Obviously, you're not hoping for anything punitive in a year or two or three or whatever it is. So that is all I have to say about it. But let's see what the people are saying for a couple minutes on this. Mark says, you do know that the athletic department training has nothing on scouting prohibition, plenty on recruiting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that matters, Mark. You'd have to tell me, why that matters to me. Does that put Michigan in the clear? Because there is a bylaw on it, even though it was written for not what was going around. And you can make the case that Michigan worked around it. This bylaw that they were trying to get rid of anyways. I mean, that might be the course that they go. But the athletic department training, I don't know, maybe it should have. The training should have been, because there is a bylaw about it, Mark. That's would be my thought on that without knowing exactly what your point is. Ohio really shows their character over these indictments. Well, when it's your team that's in the hot water, it is one of those things where your rivals are going to come after you. That's why I don't know, I want to hear what Michigan people have to say, but listening to what Michigan people have to say, listening to what Ohio State people have to say, and listening to what Michigan State people have to say, I'm really just like, okay, Michigan, has done nothing, and it was a lone wolf, and let's just move this along, get the season start. Everybody's just looking for clicks, and everybody hates Michigan. That's kind of there could be people that view it that just see that from the Michigan side. And then on the other side, the opponents are like, Michigan's a dirty, filthy, rotten, and hopefully they get the book thrown at them. And it can be a little bit nauseating. If I just pulled randomly 10 people, whether they're fans or coaches or in the media, I'm almost going to put them all in one group that is like that. And if I polled the exact same amount of Ohio State and Michigan State fans, I'm almost predictably, but that's going to be like they're going to be like. So you just know, when they say consider the source. M. Blue says you should see them over at 11 Warriors. Well, yeah, I mean, that's going to be an Ohio State site, and that is going to get them through the day. Last year, and I've said this a number of times, it was great. I don't need to sell that last year was great to Michigan fans. They won the national championship, but it also was a win for Ohio State and Michigan State fans, because they didn't have to recognize it, and they could constantly go to the Stalions card. So, and they just immediately went to the high ground about how, what Michigan did. And so you could say, if you were observing this from afar, that everyone won when it came down to that. Let's get it out. There's an Blue is talking about what I just said. This is actually the joke from Michigan fans. If you don't know, the opponents have continued to say that there is a hammer that is going to fall on Michigan, and they just keep going there and saying it and going there. And Michigan fans yawn and say there's nothing going to happen. It's laughable. So on one side, you have the hammer. On the other side, you have people laughing and saying there's going to be no hammer. So there you go. And then, yeah, OSU fans, whatever. Ferris wants everyone to like the video. Come on, Ferris, I'm with you on that. Here's another one from Mark, and then we'll move on. The athletic director, as head of sports, should be the party responsible for supervision. ADs agree to blame subordinate when they have ultimate authority and responsibility and training obligation. I don't know. I don't have like the handbook of what exactly, I see, so, AD is head of sports, but I think what you're saying here, Mark, is I would disagree. And I would say that it's actually the head coach who is going to be responsible for the supervision. And according to the bylaws of the NCAA, I know what we all think of those, that the head coach is presumed to be responsible for actions of his staff. So I don't know if you're saying you're putting the should. Yeah, well, should is not what it is and how it's playing out. So that's how it's going. I said I was going to end it right there, but we just had a fresh batch of people weighing in, including Hadley, asking me if I think it was Connor's manifesto about Michigan that caused Harbaugh to hire him. If not, how did he get this Michigan job? No, if Jim Harbaugh had any clue about the manifesto when he hired Connor Stalions, then Jim Harbaugh. I don't think Jim Harbaugh is a loose cannon. Stalions got the job because he was a retired naval officer. Is that right? Who loved Michigan, and I believe even in his own resume, talked about his specialty was, counterintelligence. That, he would be able to. I don't think he put spy right in his resume, but that's what he was about. He was about looking into the opponent and figuring out what made him tick. Now, how he sold that over to Harbaugh, I think there could be a red. Should have been a red flag. If you're getting involved in coaching and you're at Michigan, like all of us probably shouldn't be eligible to work for Michigan. Why? Because we're all super fans like Connor Stalions. We all sit in the stadium and everything that's Michigan, you're not listening to anything negative. You'll do anything for Michigan. You bleed maize and blue. And while that's great for fans, and it might be great if you're working in the recruiting department, when you are a coach and you're on the staff, you need people to be able to focus on the job at hand and not being a super fan and trying to go off the beaten path to try to do anything to help Michigan win. That was moving forward. It's easy to say now that if I was Sharon Moore and he was interviewing anybody and he'd say, well, you're a Michigan fan. And they'd say, yeah, well, I grew up a Michigan fan. It's okay. But if, they started getting wide-eyed, and it was like Connor Stalions is like, I just love Michigan. And I know a lot of people think like, oh, that's great. He'd do anything for Michigan. And look at him. He's taking the sword for Michigan because he's admitting nothing. It was all him. And, maybe it is just all him. That's the biggest thing is that Stalions, the biggest thing with Connor Stalions that got him the job, maybe his clandestine counterintelligence, being a super fan of Michigan, is also something at the end that should be commended, that he is not going to flip on Michigan. He's not going to rat. Stalions is not going to be a rat. He's going to take all of the blame and he's going to go away. I thought quietly, we do have a Netflix show that's coming up that he's not going to sing anything that involves Michigan because he's still going to just walk the line because he's not a rat. But no, Hadley, I don't think. Can you imagine? And you it's great being a fan. But when you're a coach, you got to turn a lot of that in and stop being a super fan. And I don't think Stalions could. I don't know. Those hiring practices, Harbaugh is always looking on the cutting edge and thinking, hey, who can we get in here? We want the best. We want the best speakers. We want the best trainers. We want the best coaches. We want the best counterintelligence. And when they talk to them, are they just talking about intelligence? Or are they also saying, well, is this person there altogether? What about your personal, I don't know. Can you get into what do you do? Are you I don't know. There's not a, a box there that says, "Hey, are you a nut job super fan?" Yes or no. Stallions would have had to check yes to that. Mark says Stallions didn't know it was prohibited. Yeah, I don't know. I think Mark, that ignorance is not a great defense. When you have a job and you are working for a team and your job is scouting the other team, you need to know what the rules are, what the bylines are. Stallions may have thought, this is an easy one to work around. Look, they were gonna knock this one off the books a year or so before, and look what they were saying about it. They were saying that this was no big deal, and they really just had an antiquated rule in there because they didn't want other teams spending money. It wasn't treated as a 21st century. Nobody was thinking about having cameras in the crowd. So Stallions may have thought he was really on it. There might have been a point like, I really got a live one here. This is a technicality and I can just work right around it. I'll buy that. I'll buy that. But that he just went in there and was buying all these tickets and doing all this stuff and putting it out there, and he was like, had no idea. It comes back to, again, it doesn't really matter if you think that Stallions was giving that information to Jesse Minter or Jim Harbaugh and that they were using it in games. And, so many opponents to say, of course, that's what they were doing. They don't know that. And you don't know that. It's about what you can prove. And up to this point, what we have seen that they have not been able to prove that they were using Stallions scouting video. They have not been able to prove that. I thought when they went in and busted in and grabbed the computers and that Partridge was fired, that oh my gosh, they must have found something and looked in the drives and had it right there, and that's why Tony Batiti was able to say, I'm going to do something that I've never done before, that nobody's ever done, and we're going to suspend. I thought they had all that, but apparently they don't, which is weird. They thought they really had something, and Batiti really, just got caught up and like, woo, and started believing into the opponent's, reports from the media and everything. And, he went a little bit nuts and made a mountain out of a molehill when he didn't have the goods. Because if all he had was one guy taping, unless he goes back to that bylaw, see if I have the exact bylaw, you could look it up yourself. Maybe a Bettini just looked at that bylaw and it ended up falling under the sportsmanship clause. Bylaw 11.1.1.1. A lot of bylaws. 11.1.1.1. That's the one that I think is not great for Michigan. That's it. All right, so I was just going to say that was going to be something that's really quick. I should have spit it out quicker, but there it is. My focus, not so much. I'll look at the notice of allegations, but my focus continues to be on Fresno State and Texas. Looking forward to the season. Michigan has so much to show everybody what they're all about, and that's where the focus is. So the next item on this is the outlook. And there are a lot of people that are talking about Michigan and look, it's true. They do lose Harbaugh. They did lose their entire defensive staff. They did lose their coveted strength and conditioning coach. They do lose their entire offense, save their tight end. That's a lot of loss. And if you focus on that, if you talk Harbaugh, if you talk offensive line, you talk quarterback, and you talk to Roman Wilson, Blake Corum, wow, and that's a lot. And if that's your focus, it can lead you down to, man, this is going to be even a rough year. I mean, there's no Harbaugh there. There's no quarterback. There's no line. That's what Michigan held their head on. But there's the other side, which is the defense. And I think that's where, if you're a Michigan fan, you focus in on. It's like, sure, you don't know. I mean, you know some of the players over there. You know Donovan Edwards. You know who Colston Loveland is, and you know a lot of these players that are ready to. I think Samaj Morgan and Tyler Morris, and I do think Klein and watching those tight ends at 250 pounds run these drag routes across the middle. Could I envision Alex Orji, whoever the quarterback is, just nailing these guys and that being a mismatch? Yeah, I could see that. And as Michigan's offense finds its identity, but they've got a defense. It's going to keep you in the ball game. And their toughest games they have at home. This Texas game is at the Big House. That means something. So is that Oregon game. That's at the Big House. That is going to mean a lot for Michigan. I don't put Ohio State in there because that's a whole other animal. You just put over there, and then you talk about a lot all the time. But if Michigan is able to put themselves in position to get to the Big Ten championship game, and then certainly the college football playoff going into the last game against Ohio State, you and I are going to believe that they have a really good chance to go down there and win that game. Even if they're in a position where they have to win that game to get into the college football playoff, I mean, you want to already be in. Like if you had one loss going into that game, you'd be like, oh, hey, this is great. Get into the Big Ten championship game, get a bye, but you're already in. I mean, you get greedy as you go along. I get that, but you'll feel good. Is my point about that. And so a defense and the tough games being at home, that's big for Michigan. So my outlook as I sit here, it's a 9-3, 10-2 team. What I'm looking at, everything that I've put in there. And of course, that's the big rub, because 9-3 is likely not going to get you into the college football playoff, where 10-2 is. And it's 9-3, it's 10-2, it's 9-3. I think they're going 10-2. I think they'll be able to win one of those games against Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State, and then they'll win the rest. And that will leave them with 2 losses, and that will get them into the college football playoff. That's my outlook. That's what I think right now. That's what I believe. I've got a month to adjust it. I'm not sitting around talking about what would make me change my mind to alter that. You kind of know what those kind of things are. So let's just see how that plays out. But that's where I sit right now. And that's what I say to people who ask me about the outlook for Michigan. Oh, let's see. Yeah, we got on the tail end of the NOA, so people still talking about that. So, that is my outlook. So let's go then to and this is where we started. Woo, there it is. NOA. Recruiting. Back at the barbecue, Michigan, I still think Babalola is a 2-horse race with Michigan and Stanford. This is the name you want to be familiar with. Sanders. Jaden Sanders, athlete, corner, down to Michigan and Oklahoma State. He's the thumbnail for this particular show today. And Jaden Sanders has set his commit date, and it is on August the 10th. So right around the corner for the 6'2", 175-pound athlete / corner from Kilgore, Texas. Michigan, Oklahoma State, people feeling pretty good about Michigan's chances here. It's one to keep an eye on. As for the rest of the recruiting, I urge you to join up with the Maize and Blue review today, especially if you like 2026 recruiting. It is now, I would say, as much about the 26 class as it is about the 25 class, even though the 26 class is so far away. And there was a part on here that I wanted to say because Michigan just got a 26 commitment today that I was going to be like, hey, give me a break. I'm in on the 25s, but let's wait on the 26s. But I think the thing for me when it comes down to 2026 is that Michigan's commitment that they got, their first commitment was from Brady Hart, a quarterback out of Florida. And quarterbacks, that's always going to be big. Highly rated quarterbacks, that's always going to be big. But when you get them to commit this early, Brady Hart is as important as a recruiter as the Michigan football staff. And I noticed today that I was just before the show coming in, I was just, flying through Twitter and looking, and I saw Brady Hart on my timeline. And he was quote tweeting some wide receiver and saying, oh, he's a good one. And I'm like, oh, this Hart, I see what he's doing here. This Brady Hart is putting together a class for 26. So it's nice to be able to have a point man out there doing the work. I love it. I love having the quarterback as the first one in so he can get out there and be the point man. So 2026, Brady Hart is doing a heck of a job along with Michigan, but they were able to get another commitment today. And the 26s, they're all like, I don't know if it's Brady Hart is involved with all of them saying, come on in. There a lot of them that were in for the barbecue, but Hart is doing a good job for all he can do on the recruiting side for Michigan. And I do like to see that. So we'll take a few comments to see what the folks are saying here. And I don't know what that one means, but here's Ferris talking about losing Babalola to Stanford due to academics. That would be sad. Just hire 3 Stanford professors to professional tutor him to become a doctor. Let's go. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what to say about a kid that wants to go to Stanford over Michigan. If it's just about academics and he likes the fit there, then you just wish him well. And then you say, well, he must not be serious about football. That's the Michigan. That's right in the Michigan recruiting handbook. If you lose a guy to a school, there's only a few that you would say that about, that you might say that are, better academically than Michigan. But if they're down to just Michigan in that school and you lose them, you say you must not be serious about football, because there's not many people, or there's not many schools that offer the package of academics and Michigan. So that's what I would say if it comes down to Babalola. Richard says he disagrees that Ohio doesn't choke. I think they do. We're talking about them choking against Michigan in the last game. When you are the team that has the most assembled talent and has their best chance to win a championship, and everyone is saying it's championship or bust, there is a certain amount of pressure that goes along with that. And the Michigan game also presents, once you lose 1, 2, 3 in a row, presents its own kind of pressure on Ohio State. For instance, Richard, if Ohio State won every game this year by 5 touchdowns, including, going to Oregon and just smashing the Ducks, and they went in regardless of what Michigan's record was, and Michigan got off to a quick start or something, it would affect. It would affect the Ohio State crowd. It would affect the Ohio State team. It would affect the Ohio State coaching staff. It's true. It was like that in reverse. Michigan, Ohio State, for over 10 years, they were in Michigan's head. It's not a place that you want your rival to be, but they were there. They were in Michigan's head. They were in the media's head. They were in the coach's head. They were in the player's head. And I know they fought like hell and some of the, but when they're in your head. But right now, the tables are turned, and Michigan is in Ohio State's head. Michael wants to talk about hot dogs at the barbecue. I took the pictures and I was going to put it on here and I didn't do it. Last year, there was a picture. Let's see if I can. This doesn't work out great, but I'm going to do it anyways. Last year, there was a picture of a kid named Elijah Dotson who posted this picture of the barbecue, and his plate is so lame. Mr. Dotson's, you get a plain hot dog, a cookie, and what looks like some cold macaroni and some chicken nuggets. There, nice maize and blue napkin and everything, but he called it Big House Eats, and Michigan was ripped. What a joke for a barbecue. That's what they said. Well, then Michigan put out a picture of what the barbecue looked like this year. And the plate, the hot dog looks sturdier. There's two gigantic ribs that Fred Flintstone would be proud of. Look like some pulled pork. Don't forget your corn and carrots and asparagus in there. That's a nice way to do it. I like that. There was also a part that just, oh yeah, here it is. I got this one too. And they also had a banner. Not a banner. They had balloons and a gigantic sign outside the stadium that said barbecue at the Big House with hundreds of maize and blue balloons. So they got the social media team that saw that weak plate from that kid last year. They were making sure that the plates look good on social media this year. You even had the pig, if you notice that, in the background. I don't think that's just for show, right? You don't eat that. This is a funny one from Ferris. Let's go, Mr. Martini. Bottom line, Ohio just isn't tough enough. I would say this, Mr. Martini, that in 2021, I think that's what it was. And then Ohio State preached and play, and I think that was part of it in 2022. And then I think the talent and was it part of it again. And I know we've talked about it a lot this summer. Well, Ohio State played two-hand touch in their spring game and Michigan's smashing. And so this is what Michigan's counting on. They're going to be more physical. They're going to be tougher. And when you're playing football, that's something big. Is it the bottom line, though? James wants to talk quarterbacks. Talking about Tuttle being the starter and then 10 to 15 scripted plays for Orgy to see if he develops. Yeah, James, if I don't know that we would find out that this would be the plan. But if this would be the plan, I would say that Michigan is not just going to lose 2 games. I would say that they're not going to make the college football playoff. If Michigan's rotating quarterbacks and putting Orgy in for 15 plays and starting Tuttle, I will downgrade my prediction for Michigan. That's just how I feel. It would be great if it worked out and everything else, but I don't like, nothing against you, James. I don't like this. Seems like I've cried about it. It seems like I always cry about it, multiple quarterbacks, but I'm crying about it right now. Those carrots look like they belong in a Michelin star restaurant. I agree. You got like the Bugs Bunny part on the end, and those didn't look like they were just put in a steamer. They look like, I don't even know what you would say. They look like they had a little glaze to them, but possibly were just blanched and then maybe put on a grill. You're right. A Michelin star for sure. Ferris didn't mind the screen share. Scott, we've got a little feedback on feedback crime here because Scott's saying, keep telling yourself, or you can make a forward pass as Jack Tuttle takes over the starter's role. I don't know. A lot of times, you Michigan fans, you get your information from, your next door neighbor. It could be other sites. And it could be a multitude. I mean, this isn't the only site. This is the most accurate and friendly and engaging site. But, the other sites, they've been around for, 10, 20 years. But some of them, have got a little National Enquirer, type approach built in, which does get a lot of people like, woo! And they might be the ones that are putting out the Tuttle, or it could be your next door neighbor. I'm not really sure. Having said that, Jim Scarcelli, who will join us on Wednesday, he was himself talking about Tuttle over a month ago. So I apologize to the National Enquirer for all of that. Mark coming back talking about football. He just thinks to be elite or to challenge for the Big Ten, the third team all Big Ten quarterback is needed. OSU trashed McCord, who was 2 out of the 3 all Big Ten, but near all Big Ten quarterback essential for an elite result. I think with most teams, you're correct, though. But again, Mark, I would say, Michigan, do they need elite quarterback play? I think that Cade McNamara was better than most of you, but I don't think he was an elite quarterback. And Michigan was able to beat Ohio State and have a very good year with Cade McNamara at the controls. He managed the game and made some plays with his arm. And if Orji can make a lot of plays with his legs and a few with his arm, you might not say that's elite. But if he's not turning the ball over, so I'm going to disagree with this. I don't think that you need an elite quarterback at Michigan to challenge for the Big Ten. Now, having said that, I do think you're going to need elite offensive line play. And Michigan has had elite offensive line play for the last 3 years. They have 5 new starters. How quickly they come together as a unit and how they are, their physicality in the run game, and how they are putting the quarterback in a position ahead of the chains. What the offensive line does, now I'm not telling you that the offensive line is more important than the quarterback. They're up there more because Michigan had J.J. McCarthy, who was picked number 10 in the draft, and they were still running the ball all the time. Now they got a quarterback whose biggest question mark is being able to throw the ball. They're going to run the ball more. Michigan, second half, Penn State. Michigan 2024, hold my beer that you can now buy in the stadium. Michigan may run it, and I know these wide receivers that are committed, they're going to be watching Michigan going, whoa, it's tight ends. When are we going to throw the ball? Hey, winning. Ferris pulling out the accuracy of Orji in the spring game. Yeah, I don't have his numbers right in front of me, but I would say that Orji's spring game was more of I think worried more people than encouraged them watching him play quarterback. And it wasn't about, it was about him, throwing the ball down the field. I was like, whoa. You didn't expect him to go out there and be Joe Burrow. But I think you were hoping for more. You were hoping for a better looking downfield pass than what he brought to the table. Again, it's not going to be tremendous. Scott talking about Joe Milton. Yeah, well, you know what my thoughts are on Joe Milton. Joe Milton was built in a lab of great offensive coordinators that put together and they brought out this superhero And what emerged was Joe Milton. The way he looked, the way he could throw the ball, it was like no one ever. If Joe Milton would have beat out Josh Allen of the Bills and Jared Goff for the Lions, if they were all put out there. And remember, Joe Milton beat him just with his shorts and t-shirt, because he could throw the ball like nobody else has ever been able to throw the ball. That's why Joe Milton was beating anybody throwing the ball. And everybody's, you're watching practice and you're watching, and then Joe Milton comes out and everybody just stands there. And it's like it's a fireworks show. Ooh, ah, whoa. I mean, there's really never been anything like that, Scott. OT, now that we're breaking down some stats from the spring game 2 years ago, the OT saying you have 2 picks and 2 fumbles. Yeah, Davis Warren it was a turnover machine. Tuttle and Warren were both turning it over in that. The guy that turns the ball over the least would be the starter. Somebody say that. I would say that would be a big part of it. You have to be able to lead the team down the field, and part of that is going to be able to is peppering passes and putting it on the guys, and turning it over. It's all part of that. A lot of it, even though each throw is evaluated and everything else, the guy that the team, I think the guy that, this would be a good question for Scar. They love questions like this. Jerry does too. The player that the team rallies around, they'll be one of those guys. And then if everything's really close, it'll be that guy. All right. So Tim says Joe Milton was a bad-looking dude, but his arm was more his appeal than his physical prowess. Yeah, I don't know. Like this makes it seem like, I don't know, bad-looking dude, like bad meaning good, because his arm was great. I mean, there was the one reporter out in Italy when they went over there. His lead to his story was he is chiseled out of granite. He came out in a towel or something, and I was like, wow. I don't know. That particular writer was really taken back with the physique of Joe Milton, and I feel like that when he throws the ball. All right, let's see. Do we have an update on the allegations? Notice of allegations. Maybe we do. We'll take this quick look at them here to see if there's a notice of allegations that is supposed to be coming out. And it doesn't look like it. Okay, so we'll wait and see on that. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you over on the Den on the Maize and Blue Review. It's a good time over there talking about everything that's going on with Michigan and elsewhere. You join up with a subscription from the Maize and Blue today. And by doing that, you go to michigan.rivals.com and you get it done there. All right. We'll talk with you on Wednesday. That's when training camp opens. That'll be fun. Thanks so much. Smash that like button and give us that 5-star review over on the podcast. We like those. Everybody have a great day.